Greetings! In today's video, the plan is to show you all how logic for walkers works in some cases. In very simple cases for the moment. I'm still wondering if I should try doing a far more complex showcase of the logic that I use in the bigger and stranger walkers that I make. However, for now, I'll just start off very simple and test the waters, see how it works. I don't exactly know if this is the best way to initiate people to how walkers work. I guess we'll find out. So, as the first solution, and I guess I'll just go through how this works. I have the green gate is a W key input, basically. The orange gates are a loop. They loop 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then they go back to the top. And this is all done by timings. Basically, every single gate has the same exact duration and pause, but they all have a staggered delay. Then these are the activation gates. The pink ones are for the servo, and the purple ones are for the hinges. In particular, well, actually, so I press W, and this is how the walking animation works, right? As you can see, the orange is looping, and it activates whichever gates need to be activated at that point. And this works serviceably. I'll go into detail. W gate goes into all 4 of these. These do not speak to each other. They simply have exactly same duration and pause for all of them. Exactly the same duration and exactly the same pause. And they all have a 1 output. The first one is a 0 delay, then a 0.5 delay, then a 1 delay, then a 1.5 delay. And then individually they activate whichever gates in the cycle have to be activated. Basically, number 1 is going to lift your move your rotating servo forward and lift your leg. Number 2 is going to keep your rotating servo rotated forward and drop the leg. Number 3 is going to move the rotating servo back so that the dropped leg can pull you forward. And then number 4 is going to keep the rotating servo back and lift the leg again so that it can go back to the front. It's, probably not exactly in that order, but that's how it works. That's the cycle. And then very simply, you triplicate it. You don't want to duplicate it. You don't want 4 legs, because if you have 6 legs, then at any point in the walk cycle, you have at least 3 points of contact with the ground. And that is, if you're starting out with walkers, having 6 legs is far easier than just having 4. And all of a sudden, you have a working walking animation, right? Now, the pink and purple logic on the right side controls the front right leg, the center left leg, and the back right leg, right? They alternate in a triangle so that essentially the 3 legs in a triangle will be doing the same thing so that they're always touching the ground at the same time. That's what gives you a very stable walking animation, basically. So yeah, as you can see, they always make a triangle for when they're touching the ground so that your creation isn't flipping all over the place. And then, yeah, very simply, as I demonstrated, in a triangle activating, in a triangle activating, front on the same side, back on the same side, center on the opposite side. And again for the hinges. Then we go to a different kind of walker, but still, again, using the same concepts. This one has still a W input, the loop, the two inputs for the servo and the piston, and then the red gate is what keeps the leg at a 45-degree angle constantly. The W key inputs to this red XOR gate. This red XOR gate is what controls the 45-degree constant angle on the leg when it's not animating, right? It means that whenever the distance sensor is the only thing activating the XOR gate, the leg will be at 45 degrees. Instead, when both the distance sensor and the green gate have outputs, the red gate will turn off, meaning that it's surrendering complete control over the leg to these two gates, giving control of the animation. And this works very simply like this. Basically, it's the same concept: leg lifted, move forward, leg down, move backward, leg lifted, move forward. It's basically doing the exact principle of the other walking animation, except with a different kind of motion. Well, using a piston rather than hinges, and using a servo, well, still using a servo. And basically, very easy. This gives one output, and this is on auto reset. The speed at the start position can be adjusted. Of course, if you want a smaller step, then you can increase this to whatever number, and you will take a smaller step because it will only move half the distance, right? Or 3/4 of the distance, or 1/4 of the distance. It all depends on what you want to do. And then the angle on this is, of course, 90 degrees, right? Because when the leg is fully down, it's 90 degrees from its start position. But the XOR gate has a half output, which means that this will fold down 45 degrees in its idle pose, and then it will go back to being completely flat whenever it needs to lift up. The last thing to note is this strength setting. It's on 10 because when you're using rotating servos or hinges in legs, you can use rotating servos and hinges as a form of suspension, right? If this was full 100 strength, the walking animation would not work as well because it's very bouncy, it's very stiff. Instead, you put it down to 10 strength, and all of a sudden, yes, you have suspension on the feet themselves, but the servos are also acting as suspension, which means that your walker just has more contact and more organic contact with the ground. Now, yes, this isn't the most pretty walking animation. You can refine all of these, like increasing the suspension slightly, decreasing it slightly, increasing the strength or decreasing the strength on the servos, increasing speeds and angles, and all sorts of things. And then the more complex your leg becomes, so the more hinges, servos, and other things you have on there, the more you can fine-tune the proper suspension in your walking animation so that your walking animation has the most effect, right? So that it is the most effective. Of course, it's Trailmakers. It's not the best physics engine in the universe. It's still going to be a little bit janky. However, that's most of my advice for people that want to start out making walkers. 6 legs, simple enough logic, and a few hinges and servos and maybe some pistons in places. And it basically starts you out with the principles of how to make animations work by moving blocks back and forth in a loop. And there you go. That has been a short showcase of simple examples for logic and walkers in Trailmakers. If you would like me to make a video about more complex examples, you can request that in the comments and I will consider my options for how I go about that. I hope it was informative. I hope it was understandable. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the future.